Hello and welcome back to another tutorial using Gravit Designer, a vector graphics software that you can use through your web browser. So last lesson we started looking at drawing logo designs, but we can actually use this to help us with our ticket envelope net, which is what we're working on in today's lesson. So what's a ticket envelope net? So you'll remember when we first started our project and we were looking at lots of different ticket envelopes for inspiration, what you might have seen is some of these images turning up. And when you click on it, this is essentially a map of how to make the ticket envelope. And we call that a net, N-E-T. And the way it works is we have solid lines to show us where we cut. We have the tabs, which help us to glue this all together. And we also have dotted lines to show us where we need to make folds. So in order to do that in Gravit, we're going to need to learn a couple of new tools. So let's jump back over into Gravit Designer and we'll start off just like last time by going to Print and going to the paper size, which is A4. When we select A4, we'll get a new page, a new blank page, and this should look familiar to everyone from the last lesson. But we're going to actually use some additional tools that we didn't look at last time in order to make sure that our net is accurate. Now, why is it important that it's accurate? Well, if we're going to be cutting along these lines, we need to make sure that all of these panels are going to match up. And in order to do that, we're going to use some really nice layout tools. And they're over here in the View drop-down menu. Now, I'm going to show you two of them, but I'm only going to use one and I'll explain why. In Canvas, you'll notice that you can show a grid. And when you turn this on, this grid is really useful for lining things up and making sure that we're super accurate. But some people find all of these lines here to be a little bit too busy and it can make their eyes start to water after a while. So while I'm doing the tutorial, I'm actually going to leave it off so it's not interfering with your ability to see what I'm doing. But you might well find that using this tool is really beneficial for helping you to square off and make sure that your net is really accurate. But for now, I'm going to go into View, back into Canvas, and I'm going to turn Show Grid off. Instead, I'm just going to use the rulers. So back in View, in Canvas, you'll see I've got Show Rulers. When I click that, you'll see these ruler lines appear along the side and along the top. Now, what does any of that mean? Well, if we select the hand tool, which we can also do by holding in the space bar, and we move my paper into the top left-hand corner, you'll notice that the top left corner is marked as 0, 0. This means that we've got a way of accurately measuring onto the page and making sure that all of our sizes are 100% accurate before we do any printing. Now, I want to be super accurate, so I'm working in millimeters, but if you want to change that, you can come over to this panel here and you'll see where it says unit, millimeters. We can actually click and change that to centimeters. So you might find it a little bit easier to orient yourself if you're using centimeters. I prefer using millimeters though, but that's just what I'm used to. So what you'll notice about the ruler is that it's marked 0. We've skipped 10 and we've gone straight to 20, and that's because we're zoomed quite far out. If I zoom in a little bit further by pressing the plus to zoom in, you'll see that now I get all of those numbers, and what's happened is the ruler has scaled up. It's like it's enlarged, which means that it is completely accurate and to scale no matter where I am zoomed in or zoomed out. So we don't need to worry about zooming in and out affecting the length of our lines. So aside from just showing us distance, these ruler lines are really useful because we can actually use them to get hold of some guides. And what I mean by that is if I hover over it, I click and hold, as I pull down you'll see I've got a blue line appearing out of nowhere, and as long as I hold that button and don't let go, that line will follow my pointer. If I let go, it's not the end of the world. I've just got to make sure I go back onto my pointer tool and then I can grab hold of it again and move it wherever I want. Now, I'm going to put this on the 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter mark, but you'll notice it's actually really quite difficult to do. Now, I managed it there, but you might find that you need to zoom in further so that you can see exactly what you're doing. The easiest way of doing that is by holding the control key and using your up scroll wheel. And you'll see how I'm now zoomed right in, and it's much easier to get that absolutely perfect. So what I've done there is I've moved a line from my ruler down to 1 centimeter in from the edge. The reason I've done that is because not every printer will print right to the very edge of a piece of paper. So what I don't want to do is do my design too close to this corner and then lose some of those lines in my printout and possibly have to restart the project. So in order to avoid confusing myself, I'm also going to drag out one of these ruler lines from the left-hand edge as well and put that on 1 centimetre. So now, effectively, I know that I'm 1 centimetre in from the left-hand side and from the top. So all my measurements are going to come from this point here, but I'm going to have to factor in that extra 1 centimetre. So let me show you what I mean by that. Now, I know the width of my net needs to be 10 centimeters. But if I drag out my line to 10 centimeters, what you'll realize very quickly is that it's actually only 9 centimeters between 1 and 10. So if I do this, if I draw my line along here, I'm going to find that my net is too small when I'm finished. So make sure that when you drag your ruler lines out, that you leave the right amount of space between the points. And I think I just made that. Oh yes, I went a smidge over that line. So you really do need to pay attention and be super accurate. So now I know there's exactly 10 centimeters between this point and this point. So I know my net is exactly the right width. So the next thing I need to do is work out how wide my panels are. So if my panel's going to be 7 centimeters wide, then I can either do some maths and take the 1 away from the 8 to give me the 7, or I could just simply count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I know that this line has to go across at 8 centimeters or 80 millimeters, and that's exactly where I'm going to put it. There, perfect. Now because this panel is 7 centimeters, I know that I need to, just holding spacebar to move it, I need to go 7 this way as well. So I'm just going to count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So at 15 is where I need my next line. Drag it down, get to 15 and let go. And when I zoom out, you'll see I've actually got my top and my sides and my bottom, and I'll just fold it there, and I've almost finished designing my net, except there's a lot of things missing. So firstly, I don't actually have any tabs, so I'm going to need to factor those in. Now remember, I came 1 centimeter in from these two edges, so I don't really want to go out on these sides if I can avoid it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my tabs on this side of the lines. So the first thing I'm going to think of is, how wide do I want my tabs? So I'm just going to drag out a line and I'm going to put it 1 centimeter out and have a look at what that looks like. Now those tabs look really big to me, so I think what I might do instead is make that 0.5 centimeter wide, that tab. So here we go, let me zoom in, and if I zoom in enough, you'll see I get the 0.5 centimeter mark. That's why I like working in millimeters. So instead of being 11 centimeters or 110 mil, this is going to be 115 millimeters. And so I just hover over it, drag it back to 115, get it exactly on there. And now I know that if I use this line, that my tabs will be exactly 0.5 centimeter wide. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the bottom line here. And I'm just going to put my marker line. So now I can see that I've got those 0.5 centimeters. I'm just going to drag it down to 155. And then zooming out, you'll see I've now marked where my tabs are going to go on both sides of my net. So now with all of the hard work done, I can move on to actually drawing my net. And this should be fairly straightforward because it's going to be using all of the tools we've already used before. So I'm going to come over to my pen tool, and remember, whenever we select the pen tool, we want to make sure that we aren't filling by mistake. So come over and press that trash button there and get rid of the fill. And so that you can see what I'm doing, I'm actually going to make my border 3 pixels thick to start with, just so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. Now, having a think about how this is going to fit together, I think the easiest place to start is in this top corner here. And remember, we always want to zoom in so that we can accurately see where we're about to draw our dots. So I click once and let go, and that attaches that vector point to where I started and to the end of my pen tool. And now I can use the control button and the scroll wheel to zoom out, and I can move in and zoom in here. Now I don't want to go all the way out to the edge of my tab because I want to put some rounded edges on my tab so it fits together more neatly. So I'm actually going to go to this point here, and you'll notice that it actually snaps to the ruler lines, which makes my life a lot easier. And I click once and let go. And you'll see that the edge of my net has now been drawn. So what's the difference when we're drawing the tabs? Well, I want a rounded tab. So actually what I can do is, if I want to be super accurate, I can use the ruler to do this, or we can do it by eye. I'm going to do it by eye. I hope you use the ruler. You click and you hold, and you'll remember that with the bezel, we can just pull out those edges and create a nice smooth curve. Now again, we end up with a curve after that curve that we don't want. So we click on that last point to reset it to a straight line. Holding the space bar, I can then drag the page over. Then when I let go of the space bar, it goes straight back onto that pen tool. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to need to close this tab off over here. So straight line to here. I'm going to go to this corner, click and hold, and then we're going to create that lovely curved tab. Perfect. Click on the last point to go back to our straight line. And remember, there's going to be a tab on this side as well. So I'm going to move in slightly, click and hold. And we're going to create a nice curved tab on this side. So what I could do now is take my tab all the way up to the top here, but that would be a terrible mistake, because remember, these two sides are going to fold together. So the tab only needs to be on one of these sides, not all the way up there. If I try and do that, I'm going to get a bit of a mess when I try and fold them over each other. So I'm going to stop my tab here, click once, and then back in this corner, click and hold, and there we go. I get my nice curved edge. Click on the last point to reset it, and I've got to remember this time to take the inside line to this point, and then the final stretch going home here, go back to this point, and remember to click and close the shape. If I've closed the shape, it no longer follows around after my pointer. If you've made a mistake on that one, all you need to do is hit the undo key. It'll reattach to your pointer and you can have another go. There we go. We've completed the outside of our net shape. So now we've done the outside of our shape. We've got our cut lines, we've put our tabs on, and we look like we're ready to go. However, we have forgotten to do these fold lines, and you'll notice that these fold lines are dotted. So let's learn how to do dotted lines. I'm going to click off that shape to deselect it, and then when I zoom in, when I draw my next line, I'm going to make sure that I'm not right on top of this shape, because as you'll remember from last week, that's going to add a point to this shape that we've already drawn, which we don't want to do. So what I need to do is to look where any of my folds are going to be. And so there's going to be a fold line here, there's going to be a fold line here, and there's going to be a fold line here. So I can actually ignore this top shape and just zoom in on the bottom shape down here. Now it's really important when I draw these new lines with my pen tool that I don't attach it to the original shape, because when I try and change it to a dotted line, it's going to change my whole shape to a dotted line. So you want to come just inside that line and click once, follow your markers, and then just inside the other line, click once again. Now I'm going to press escape just to let go of that, and you'll notice that this line is not attached to the rest of my shape, and that's really important. So when I select it again with my select tool, you'll see it comes up as a different shape. When I select this shape, it gives me the whole object. When I select this shape, it just gives me that line. And that's really important because it's just that line that I want to be dotted. And how do we dot it? Well, actually, it's a lot easier than you think it is. Over here, where it says borders, where we've been changing the pixel thickness and we changed the color last week, there's some little sliders that give us advanced settings. Now don't panic, it's not super advanced, it's just when we click on it, we get an extra pop-up box. And you'll notice that we have the ability to set dashes and gaps. Now you can fiddle around with this and get the style and design that you like the best, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 5 in the dash, a 5 in the gap, a 5 in the dash, and a 5 in the gap, and that gives me a nice even dotted line. And if I click on this dark grey area here, it brings me back out, and you can see I have a lovely dotted fold line. So I go back to my pen tool, and I'm just going to repeat that for all of my fold lines. So here I click once, let go, move the pointer down, click once, let go, and then press escape. use my pointer tool, select that line, go into the advanced tools and put 5, 5, 5, 5 again. Now sometimes when you select your pen tool, you will notice that over here in the advanced settings, it has remembered my dash and gap setting. So actually when I draw this line, click, let go, click, let go, it's actually going to draw that as a dotted line for me. I just press escape to come out of that. So just remember, when you select your pen tool again after drawing a dotted line, you need to come over here and make sure in the advanced settings that you have reset your dash and gap to 0. Otherwise, every line you draw will be a dotted line. So when I zoom out, you can now see my completed net, where I've got my tabs, I've got my fold lines, and I've got my front and back for my envelope. Now obviously this is a very simple envelope, and we may want to go ahead and start adding some additional designs to it. So what I'm going to show you now is how to adjust your net once you've finished, because with our initial design it's very basic, and I think I might want to add some extra features that make it more user friendly and more attractive. So I'm going to use my select tool to make sure I select the outer shape, and then I'm going to take my pen tool and zoom right in on this left hand side. Now why am I zooming in? Well, actually what I want to do is hover over it, and you'll remember we can add points. So I'm going to add 1 point there and 1 point there. And then I'm going to go back to my sub-select tool, which allows me to move those points around. And what I'm interested in doing is grabbing hold of this line and pulling it in. And that way I create a little finger loop, so it's going to be a lot easier to get my ticket out. Let's have a look at what that looks like. Oh dear, that's really, really wonky. Let's have a little play around with these points and get it exactly how I want it. There we go, that looks a lot better. Now because next lesson we're going to be back in the classroom, it's quite important that we remember to save a copy of this so we can access it when we get back into school. So you're going to say File and you're going to say Save. And actually you can have a choice of saving it to the cloud if you're going to remember your username and password for when we're in school, or the safest option is to save it to File and then upload that file to Teams. So hopefully that video has shown you how to use the tools that we need today, and I want you to jump back onto the Teams assignment now and look at specifically what I want you to make. Thanks for watching.